TV channel. Watch in this episode. On March 29, 2022, a major storm hit Uruguay with torrential rain. A storm warning was issued in 12 provinces of the country. In the city of Mercedes, Soriano province, wind speeds reached 75 miles per hour. Torrential rains caused rivers to overflow and flood city streets, causing traffic collapse on the roads. The storm caused severe damage to regions of Uruguay. We'll hear more about other disasters in the Americas from the reporter in Ecuador.
Hello, this is the breaking news reporter from Ecuador. On March 27th, heavy rains caused floods and numerous landslides in southern Ecuador. The province of Azuay was hit the hardest. Unfortunately, casualties have been reported. About 20 homes were damaged. Over 400 people were evacuated. Floods and landslides moved rocks and debris, causing serious disruption to traffic. In particular, traffic on the Cuenca Moleturo road was blocked. The water supply was also affected. About 250,000 people were left without drinking water. The spring day of March 28, 2022 was punctuated by a snowstorm that hit the state of Pennsylvania, USA. Poor visibility on an icy and snow-covered interstate highway in Schuylkill County caused a massive accident. Unfortunately, casualties have been reported. Dozens of people were injured. The work of rescuers was hampered by a fire that arose due to a collision of trucks.
On March 30th, residents of Springdale, Arkansas, USA, were struck by a devastating tornado. Several people were seriously injured. The storm completely destroyed several buildings, downed many trees and power lines. A search and rescue operation has been deployed in the city, as people could have remained under the rubble. The Meteorological Service reports that the storm cyclone has moved into the neighboring states of Arkansas, such as Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, and Tennessee. About 110,000 people were left without electricity in these states. The topic of climatic disasters in America will be continued by an eyewitness from Brazil who will tell us about the massive flooding in Petropolis.
Hello, my name is Anderson. I live in Brazil in the state of Rio de Janeiro. I am an astronomer and astrophysicist with a degree in physical chemistry. I also study climatology and geology. I witnessed everything that happened in my region. It was a real catastrophe. So, just an hour and a half or 2 hours of rain was enough to destroy the whole city because more than 260 millimeters of rain fell. So it was practically the average of the whole month in just 2 hours. As a result, there was a lot of destruction. So, at the moment I'm fine, but at the time of the catastrophe, I was without electricity and without water. I was without water for several days, but other people lost houses. Many people lost loved ones. It is really sad, and the situation is beginning to return to normal after a long time. At the time of the occurrence, that to my mind was not just a rain, but a deluge of 2 hours. As soon as the rain stopped, I came across people crying. Many people were crying, and that's when it came to my attention that many people had died, and that there had been several landslides in that city. Many people were buried. It was really something terrible. I would describe it as a war situation. As I said, in the center of the city, for example, it was raining so hard that in 10 to 15 minutes the rivers overflowed and swept away buses, swept away people. Buses were full of passengers. The cars with drivers and people inside were swept away, typical of an apocalypse movie. In my view, the rescue team took too long to arrive because the whole city was affected. So what saved us was the attitude of the motorcycle couriers, because we were stranded without food, without water. And then the motorcycle couriers are those guys who use motorcycles to deliver food and water. And they were the guys who saved us, because they had the initiative to deliver food and water to people, because the roads were greatly damaged and there was no way for the cars to pass. So the motorcycle couriers were those who made all the difference. So people started to act themselves. Taking this opportunity, I would like to invite you on May 7th, 2022 to the forum Global Crisis. We are people. We want to live. We want all people to participate in this forum, and I hope I have contributed too.
Any cataclysm is as much a threat to life as it is a test of humanity. Often eyewitnesses of climatic accidents tell how people in emergency situations begin to act and help each other. But also globally, if people unite, we will survive. If not, we will die. Coming up next, an eyewitness from Poland will also tell about the experience of people interacting after the storm.
I'm Irena Kuczynska from Plaszczów. It's the small town in the region of Greater Poland. I woke up in the morning and I looked out the window and I saw the roof of the building next door flying. I went outside. The roof was really flying. There were several windows broken in my unit and the balcony was damaged. But when I looked on the internet, it turned out that 14 kilometers away from me, in the wonderful historic town of Dobrzyca, an entire street had simply been destroyed. The hurricane had swept along the street, demolishing about 90 houses. These were residential houses on this short street, and there wasn't a single house that wasn't damaged. 5 houses on that small street in Dobrzyca were completely taken out of service by building control, because entering those buildings was life-threatening. It was a terrible explosion. Through the window, you could see the roofs of the neighboring buildings flying off. Bricks started falling on people's heads. We had seen on television that something like this was happening somewhere far away, but it came here. There was still a patch of forest between Dobrzyca and Sosnica, and the wind was ripping the trees out with the roots. People said it was something so impossible and unheard of that it was happening here, on the typical plain of Wielkopolska. Even where the glacier had passed, sometimes there are hills and valleys, while here is a completely flat surface, and no one believed that 2 fronts could collide in such a calm place. I think at this point, people have seen that it's all so close that it could happen. In fact, when this storm is coming through, there is nothing you can do anymore. You can only take shelter somewhere so you don't die, because nothing really depends on you anymore. Immediately, such activity began. People started bringing food because everyone was without electricity. Good thing we have Facebook. Someone posted there that they had bricks, shingles, some stuff. There's so much help on the internet. It worked right away. Now people get mobilized and we just get the work done. If there's a problem, all the resources go there and help everybody.
If you have witnessed a climate anomaly, send your video footage to climate@creativesociety.com. Record low or no precipitation has caused an extreme and prolonged drought in Spain during the winter of 2021 to 2022. According to the National Meteorological Agency AEMET, rainfall this winter was only a third of the average for the same period from 1981 to 2010. The southeast of Spain received the least amount of rain. It was less than 25%. In the Balearic Islands, this winter was the driest on record. The arid zones of the Iberian Peninsula historically faced periods of drought, but experts say that climate change has greatly exacerbated the problem. It is worth noting that Spain, like many other countries around the world, experiences sharp contrasts of weather phenomena. So with the arrival of spring, drought was replaced by abnormal rains. In the period from 16th to 22nd of March, heavy rains fell all over the country, especially in the south and east of Spain. During the first 20 days of the month, there was 44 more rainfall than usual in March. The heavy rains caused numerous floods and landslides. For other disasters in Europe and Asia, watch next in the report.
On March 29th, heavy rain caused flooding in the Spanish town of Setenil de las Bodegas in the province of Cadiz. Fortunately, there were no casualties. Several people were injured. Residents were trapped, so rescue operations were conducted. Water mixed with mud damaged more than 30 houses and many cars. Basements and first floors of some buildings were flooded. The roads became impassable. According to local residents, it is the worst flooding to hit the city this century. Earlier, since March 23rd, forest fires have spread to the outskirts of Venice in northern Italy. Hundreds of hectares of forest were scorched. Train traffic in the area has been suspended. The large number of fires is due to a long period of drought and little rain over the past few months. On March 29th, 30th, a hurricane struck most of Kazakhstan. It brought snow, snowstorms, and strong winds. Wind gusts in some places exceeded 100 kilometers per hour. There are reports of several casualties. In the south of the country, traffic was completely stopped. More than 70,000 residents were left without electricity in 6 regions of Kazakhstan. The country's capital, Nur-Sultan, was hit by one of the worst snowstorms of the winter. Visibility on the roads dropped to a few meters, which caused large-scale car accidents. In Almaty, the hurricane tore the roofs of houses, overturned cars, and felled many trees. The wind even turned a 50-ton Boeing 737 at the local airport.
Real scientists prove that global climate change is caused by astronomical processes and their cyclical nature. But instead of the real causes, the media massively replicates the anthropogenic factor. And despite the measures taken to combat CO2, climatic cataclysms day by day are aggravating the situation on the planet. This shows that the anthropogenic factor is not the cause of climate change.
As of today, the anthropogenic factor has had a very strong impact on the environment. We are not saying that it doesn't affect CO2. But if we take it on a scale of, excuse me, our atmosphere, it is such a tiny percentage that, again, it is easily compensated for and cannot affect anything at all. If we consider how much carbon dioxide swamps emit today, how much, excuse me, volcanoes emit. Just recently, about a month ago, right, there was an eruption, the first eruption of such power over recent years. It spewed out so much carbon dioxide that we, pardon me, as whole humanity would have to emit for a very long time to reach this amount. Isn't that so?
Those very swamps in Congo actually contain carbon dioxide.
Of course.
In the amount equivalent to our entire humanity emitting it worldwide over 3 years.
We'd have to try really hard. Here's a simple answer.
Right, emitting CO2 from burning fossil fuels.
Again, lies about green energy that is foisted on us very actively. What for? It's a good question, isn't it? If we look honestly from an environmental and economic perspective, it is simply nonsense. It is much more harmful than burning those very hydrocarbons. It takes so much fossil fuels to produce these green power systems and subsequently to maintain them, while during disposal they cause a lot of harm overall, during both manufacturing and operation. What's the point of all this? Lies and deceit are everywhere. You know, if we look sensibly from the perspective of the consumerist format, as you say, 600 billion is a weighty argument for many people to prove to us with such anger and fanaticism that 0.0004% can affect something.
By maintaining a consumerist format of society that is based on lies, lust for power, and making money, we are losing time and opportunity to survive. Even in matters of ecology, not to mention climate change, everything is built on deception. We are assured that if we switch to carbon-free energy production, it will supposedly save the world and the environment.
Today, renewable sources make up about 28% of total energy. Yet in order to produce them, we still use non-renewable natural resources. All this continues to contribute to the depletion and pollution of the planet. Solar panels, for example, contain such heavy metals as lead, cadmium, and mercury. During operation, they leach into the ground and evaporate into the atmosphere. Waste from solar panels is 300 times more toxic than nuclear waste and requires special disposal. But since it costs more than production, they decided not to bother with it and send the used panels to landfills in poor countries. So far, not a single country in the world today has regulations for their disposal. According to scientists' studies, by 2030, there will be up to 8 million tons of green waste in the world, and by 2050, these volumes will increase to 80 million tons. Let us imagine how these numbers would increase if we completely switch to these sources. Is this calculated in the reports? And is this topic explored that deeply at the conferences? As you can see, this only makes the environmental situation worse, and this is just the tip of an iceberg that we have to look into deeper. So what's wrong with wind farms? Let's start with our wallets, out of which you and I will have to pay for these ambitious solutions. To build a wind farm requires an enormous investment of money and resources. At that, the average lifespan of a wind turbine is 20 years, and during this time, it manages to recoup only 78% of the money spent upon its construction and installation. We are not even talking about maintenance, which implies building special-purpose vessels, expensive utility high-rises, and constant replacement of blades. Just one wind turbine requires more than 500 tons of lubricants, which is comparable to 9 tank cars of railway trains, which, by the way, are also produced from non-renewable resources of the planet. Just think about it. The size of the blades can be as big as the length of a soccer field. And do you know what they are made of? That's right, of that very plastic that we continue to struggle with so unsuccessfully around the world. Because of their gigantic size and hazardous chemical composition, they can't be recycled. So the classic solution is that the blades are taken to landfills and covered with soil. After all that, do you still think wind power is environmentally friendly? Now let us take a look at the downside of hydropower. 65% of the world's major rivers are blocked by hydroelectric dams. At that, dam failures and breaches put lives at risk and the planet's ecology suffers. Hydroelectric power plants directly affect the bowels of the earth. Tons of water from reservoirs press against tectonic plates, causing man-made earthquakes. We keep being persuaded that alternative sources will improve the environment and solve the issue of climate change. Why?
Alternative energy sources are just a tool to make money and control the market. In the end, it is still the same game of power and lust for profit, but in no way a concern for people and saving their lives. This is why we need to change the format of society in the first place. A creative society is beneficial to everyone and will save everyone's life. Only in a creative society we will solve the ecological and other crises. We will be able to use free energy, study thoroughly the true causes of climate change, and develop technologies to save people and the entire planet. The creative society is the only way for mankind to develop. You can learn more about the creative society at creativesociety.com. Thank you for being with us today and see you soon on the Creative Society TV channel.